So who talks first? You talk first? I talk first.
At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have revenge.
Always two there are.
Good. Twice the pride, double the fall.
You are the chosen one!
That's right, that music means that we are back here on Roll On Gaming. Welcome back to the show. Sorry we haven't been with you for a couple weeks, but you know what? It's been busy talking about all the things that we have to talk about with Star Wars Unlimited, and we're going to go ahead and share some of those thoughts with you. But as always, I am Kevin. I am joined by my brother Corwin. Corwin, how we doing?
Doing well, man. Excited to get into it.
Yeah, let's definitely jump in because we got a lot to discuss. There are a lot of cards that we have missed in the spoiler circuit. We'll get into those. And I want to talk a little bit about the overall sort of feelings that we have on drawing cards in Star Wars Unlimited, because there have been a lot of cards recently that have come out that deal with draw. We're going to talk about some of them today. But before we get into that, I just want to say thank you to all the people that continue to support us on YouTube, interact with us on Twitter, and also on YouTube. Your support has been really meaningful. It's been very noticed, and it's been very, very awesome. So thank you all for that. I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible in person at all the awesome events that we saw revealed for competitive organized play for Star Wars Unlimited. That's not something we'll dive into a ton today, but needless to say, Corwin, we're excited.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's going to be a while before we get any of these big competitive events, but it's probably a good thing, to allow time for everyone to sort of get their feet wet in the game and get some local games under their belt first. But, definitely excited about the upcoming competitive events. The Galactic Championships being open registration for the first year, I think, is a huge W. So yeah, really, really excited for all of that to come.
Yeah, very glad about that, because the chances of me getting invited on merit, especially that first year, a little dicey. But hopefully being able to get a ticket and an open invite is perfectly okay by me. And I'm really excited about the planetary qualifiers and being at store level. Hopefully those will be pretty accessible, especially in our area. But I want to start really quick because there was an interesting discussion that was had on our Twitter account at RollandSWD. I mentioned that that I've been playing around with a lot of different leaders lately, and there were a lot of people, a lot of you who listen and watch and keep an eye on us who have had a variety of experiences with leaders so far in Star Wars Unlimited. So Corwin, I wanted to pose a question to you the same way I posed it to the overall masses, and by masses I use that word very conservatively. With the leaders that we've seen so far in Unlimited, like what's getting you excited to build with? What's getting you excited to build a deck around? Like, what's a leader that really has your eye right now?
Sure, yeah. I mean, admittedly, I don't think I've played the game as much as you have at this point, but I can definitely say that. Ever since he got released, and I know this is kind of throwing it old school a bit, but Boba Fett for me, I think is the one that is really continuing to stand out. I'm just really curious to see what I can do with the resource gen and the ability to kind of manipulate the resource curve through Boba's ability. I think yellow cunning is a super interesting aspect, and we're going to learn more about it this month with them, which I'm very excited about. But I think some of the cards, the early cards that we've seen that are accessible to both sides in cunning, look really, really interesting. And so I think I'm looking forward to Boba. I really want to see how that mechanic of readying the resources plays out, and if it's feasible to kind of put you over the top. Resource wise.
Totally, because theoretically you could just stop resourcing at 5 or 6 with Boba and be perfectly happy, since you're getting so many resets around theoretically with his ability. I mean, he really opens up the game for keeping more cards in your hand and being able to do stuff with them at a low price point. So Boba Fett's one that was also mentioned, and one that's really interesting, and I'm excited to learn more about what goes into a Boba Fett deck this week when we see the Cunning Aspect stream coming up. Hopefully, by the time you've seen this, it will still be coming up. But if it's already happened, then for the future people, I bet it was a great stream. Boba Fett feels really good, especially because the Boba Fett unit also feels really good. I just can't seem to tear myself away from Darth Vader, at least for now. And Vader has been one that obviously we all know about and have known about since the beginning. But the power level of Vader there's a reason he comes out at 7. And just getting that extra 2 damage on attack, having the 8 HP, having his lightsaber be a complementary piece. I've really been enjoying watching Vader just sort of like keep you in a game. There's definitely a time that you could be down, but Vader hits the table, the game changes, as long as it doesn't get overwhelming barraged or maximum firepowered or whatever. There's definitely a world where Vader changes the game.
Yeah, and that's exciting, right? Because he's a starter character or leader. So that is obviously going to be huge if he has, formidable play in once we start to kind of form the competitive scene here. But yeah, I mean, I still think Vader is strong as well, and I'm glad that you're finding the same. And obviously, I'm excited for you, being the Vader fan that you are. It's going to be great if he can be viable.
Well, I say all that, and then if what we think might be true, and Thrawn is a leader, I mean, I'm going straight off the deep end on Thrawn. So we'll see where we get, but we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here. Let's talk about some of the cards that have been recently revealed for Star Wars Unlimited. We'll burn through these a little bit quicker than the last time because I want to get to a little bit more discussion. But the month that we just passed, October, was Aggression Month. So we'll start with an Aggression card. This one was revealed by FFG. This is Infiltrator's Skill, a 1-cost single aspect upgrade. And for the 1 cost, you're getting +1/+1, and attached unit gains Saboteur. Pretty straightforward here, but I do think Saboteur is going to pay dividends because of its ability to get past Sentinels and hit shields. 2 things that I think are going to be very, very viable in an early metagame.
Yeah, we talked about this last episode. Having Saboteur in Aggression feels especially strong because you're trying to hit the base constantly. So I like this card a lot for 1. I would pay 1 for this just to get the Saboteur keyword. And then on top of that, you're getting the +1/+1 upgrade to your unit. So I think this is a great value, and something I'm going to be taking a very close look at for Aggression decks.
Right. If you think of Tarkin's ability, which I think Tarkin's one of the stronger leaders at this point, you pay 1 to get the experience token. This is that same cost, except you're getting Saboteur attached to it. Now, will it always be useful? Maybe not. Maybe this ends up being a sideboard card, as others have suggested. We don't know a whole lot about sideboards other than the fact that they exist. But I do think that this is, because Saboteur has the ability to tag both things and not just one. I think that this is going to have some value here, and again, paying 1 for an experience has been proven to be good. And so this just gives you a little bit of extra, and we'll see where that gets us. Continuing on to probably a better Aggression card, one that I think has been universally lauded since its reveal. This again was revealed by FFG. This is the Green Squadron A-Wing, 2-cost space unit, Aggression and Heroism. For that 2 cost, you're getting a 1/3 Rebel Vehicle Fighter with Raid 2. So essentially a 3/3 for 2 when it attacks. There's not much more to say about this other than the fact it's awesome, and it goes in every Aggression Heroism deck as a 3-of, hands down. And I mean, I think this would make you want to play Aggression just to get this on your side. It's really good.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it packs a lot of punch for 2 resources. Great starting unit, and potentially can stick around a little bit with the 3 health. So yeah, not, like you said, not much more to say about it. It's just a really, really solid unit card.
This is sort of playing into my thought process that right now Rebels have a better space force than Imperials do. We might change our minds on that here in a little bit.
There's a card coming that might say otherwise, Kevin.
Well, yeah, I think they do two different things in Rebel space and Imperial space, but
that's true.
I think there's no argument that the Green Squadron A-Wing is going to see a lot of play early, late, and in the middle. I mean, this is a common, right? This is a really good common.
Yeah, no, definitely going to be very excited to pull this in any sort of limited format. It's a great little starter unit to throw out there. Just, yeah, really solid card.
Can't ignore space. All right, let's move on to the Academy Defense Walker. This is a 6-cost ground unit in Vigilance and Villainy, the double Vs. For that 6 cost, you're getting a 5/5 Imperial Vehicle Walker with Sentinel. And when played, give an experience token to each friendly damaged unit. Hello, Director Krennic. Nice to see you. We're slowly but surely getting some Krennic support. Whether or not I want to pay 6 for this, I don't know. What do you think?
I think it's okay at 6. I mean, definitely like the fact that it has Sentinel. That's probably what makes the card. And then I'm always good to see, when played or other triggers that have upside. So the fact that this could potentially give you, you're probably realistically only getting 1 to 2 experience tokens out of this on average. But the fact that it could give you more than that, if you're going a little wider, is very appealing. So I think this is a fine card. I like it at 6. I would definitely be looking at it as just a very solid, a slightly above average option compared to some of the other villainy vigilance cards we've seen thus far.
I'm a little more hesitant on this card because I don't think you would ever pay 6 for a 5/5 Sentinel unless you're desperate. The amount of buffs that it can give or receive, again, you can buff this with Tarkin, you can buff this with Veers. It can give out the experience tokens. I think if you're feeling really good about this, you need to be giving out 2 experience tokens with it. I think 1, you're essentially paying 6 for a 6/6 Sentinel. That's mostly on curve. I think for a single aspect unit, again, you look at Cell Block Guard as the example, single aspect villainy, 3 for a 3/3 Sentinel. So I think when you have the double aspect, you're looking for a little bit more bang for your buck, which is why I think you want to make sure that you're getting at least 2 experience out of this. If so, being able to spread that around, since this is going to take damage immediately anyway, I like it that way. But I think it's a much more situational card than, say, the Green Squadron A-Wing, which were both spoiled at this on the same stream. So I guess what remains to be seen how much work this ends up doing, but definitely fits right into a Krennic deck.
Yeah, and I mean, I think if you're getting 2 experience when played, you're doing very well.
Yeah.
So you're not going to feel too bad about the 6 cost at that point. I think that's probably more than you'll get normally, but yeah, obviously as much value as you can extract from that ability, you should.
Yeah. Moving on to Hera Syndulla. Now, this was the long-awaited command rare heroism leader, widely speculated on multiple podcasts, multiple fronts, multiple people in the Discord were saying that Hera would have this ability, and she did. Hera allows you to ignore the aspect penalty on Spectre cards that you play, and Hera deploys at 6 resources. When she deploys, she is a 4/6 Rebel Twi'lek Spectre, and you have the same ignore aspect penalty ability as a passive when she flips, but also on attack you can give an experience token to another unique unit, which there are going to be plenty of if you're playing Spectres, and also Rebels. Rebels have a lot of the unique units that you can throw in there. So I ask to you, this Hera, do we feel like the passive is enough to give this a solid power level and therefore give it a look?
I don't know, because it kind of boxes her in a little bit. It means that she doesn't really have the same flexibility in deck building as some of the other leaders do. Mm-hmm. So I think it just is going to be a question of how limiting that is. And how powerful the Spectres are together, and then what other Spectre support is coming besides just the unit cards. So I think that's where we'll find out what Hera is going to be doing in terms of the metagame. But I think for now, I'm a little concerned about her limitations, just not really having an ability outside of granting some extra freedom with Spectres.
Yeah, and you mentioned it, to be fair, we haven't seen the full range of Spectres yet, so her power level's still a little bit up in the air. I will say we've already seen Kanan, be able to directly affect the Spectres within, the board state. Being able to take all these multiple aspects will help Sabine's unit card for her not to be attacked, which I think is what you want out of that Sabine unit. Ezra doesn't really affect Spectres at all, so he's just sort of another Spectre body, but he is unique to give an experience token to, if you so choose with Hera. This is definitely not a draft card or a sealed card, but I think they designed the rare leaders to be more constructed focused. I think that your point about flexibility is a very good one. But I have to imagine we're going to get at least 3 or 4 more Spectre units, if not more. And that number will also grow as we continue through the sets. So I think, this is a wait and see for me. Definitely not one that I'm as excited to build, but, that may change when they drop a legendary Chopper, and, we just have to get that in all our decks.
Oh, Chopper. It's got some PTSD there.
Yeah.
But yes, agreed with you on that. And, I'm hopeful because I just finished watching Rebels, and Hera's awesome. I love her character in the show. So I definitely would want to get her on the table at some point. And hopefully she's going to pack some punch here.
That's right. For those of you who are listening, you did hear right. Corwin just finished Rebels for the first time. So it's
yeah.
20,
I'm behind.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's amazing how you got through Destiny without knowing who half these characters were. But I digress. We'll move on to a couple cards that were revealed by Max Tapera on social media. That link will be in the description box. We're starting first with General Tagge. He is an Imperial official, 2-cost ground unit in Command Villainy. That 2 cost gets you a 2/2, and when played, you can give an experience token to each of up to 3 trooper units. Now, we've already seen a lot of troopers in the Imperial tribal subtype. I want to make sure we get to the other spoiler from Max before we talk about Tagge here, because I think it's important context. Because he got a trooper. Surprise, surprise. The Seasoned Shoretrooper, another 2-cost Command Villainy ground unit. For that 2 cost, you're getting a 2/3 Imperial Trooper. And while you control 6 or more resources, this unit gets +2/+0. So the Trooper archetype is really flourishing already in Villainy, in Command Villainy specifically. They're handing out experience tokens left and right. They're handing out pluses to your units. How do we feel about Tagge and the Shoretrooper in concert here?
We feel good about it. I mean, the Imperials are sort of building this very impressive archetype with the Trooper, keyword, and I think the Shoretrooper here is not my favorite of the bunch. I just don't know how much you really want this guy once you get to 6, and I mean he's fine at 2. But I just think some of these officials that the Imperials are getting, I just think they're very, very good. And I think Tagge is one of them. So I'm really liking where that's headed. I think if you want to be diving into, including a lot of officials in these decks, they can bring some very powerful abilities to the board. Being able to give, potentially 3 experience tokens for 2 resources is huge. So really like Tagge, not so much the Shoretrooper.
See, I couldn't disagree with you more on the Shoretrooper, to be honest with you. I think this is a staple in every green deck, not just an Imperial deck. I think it's a staple in every green deck that you make that's in Villainy. because green is the aspect of ramp. You're going to get to 6 resources almost always, unless you're playing Boba Fett and you decide to stop. And when you hit that 6, not everything you draw is going to be 6 or higher, right? You're going to draw some low-cost cards. So I think this might be the best 2-cost unit on Villainy right now, just because it has early and late game flexibility. If you drop this early, you still have the 3 HP to give it a little bit more of that survivability. But if you drop it late, you're paying 2 for a 4/3, which is incredibly above curve, and something you're regularly going to be able to get to if you're playing something like Super Laser Technician, which should probably go in every green villain deck as well, or Resupply, which has a little bit more of a niche following. But yeah, I think Seasoned Shoretrooper is a tremendous card, and one that I would not sleep on, especially when you pair it with the fact that it's going to look incredible as a hyperspace variant.
No dispute there. But I mean, it's hard to see any of these cards not looking good with alternate treatments.
It's a fair point.
Yeah, I mean, if I guess it just kind of depends on where you're landing with your command strategy, because if you're trying to do the build up to a really big thing and then wreak havoc, I just don't really see this fitting with that. Yes, you're going to accumulate resources, but it doesn't necessarily fit the mold in the same way. So I think it just kind of depends on your strategy. But I'm a little bit less excited about this card than others that have come out at 2 costs for Imperials, especially in ground. I just think the officials are all better.
Well, you definitely, if you have 6 resources, you definitely want Piet more than you want this card late game. But again, I think that this one provides some of the most viability when you do draw it, and it's a 2 cost that you don't necessarily need late game. All of a sudden, that's 2 extra power that you wouldn't have had otherwise, on like a First Legion Snowtrooper or a Snowtrooper Lieutenant, which I will never badmouth Snowtrooper Lieutenant, but it doesn't get +2/+0 when you have 6 resources. So at any rate, I'm excited to see what both of those cards can do. So it was cool to see both of those from Max. We'll move on to 2 cards that we got from BrettBallett on YouTube. And the next 4 cards were presented to us from foreign language YouTubers, which I think is awesome. Really cool to see that happening. And it's not just because this is obviously a global game. This is not just an American game. So pretty excited to see that. We'll start first with the Ardent Sympathizer. It's a 3-cost single aspect aggression ground unit. You're getting a 3/3 trooper that while you have the initiative, this unit gets +2/+0. Pretty straightforward in the sense that, 3 for a 3/3 on a stick is great. It does have the added bonus of the possible initiative, but when you're in single aspect, I don't think you're too upset about 3 for a 3/3. So I think this is a pretty solid card, especially for a common. It's going to be great in limited play, and if there's a trooper archetype on either side, hero or villain, it might find a place.
Yeah, I think it's fine. The trooper keyword definitely saves it a little bit, just because we had just talked about the different plays possible there. But otherwise, not a great card by any stretch, but a decent enough option, especially for an aggression deck that's probably going fast anyway.
Yep. I'll say this: Grand Inquisitor loves this, which is great. So, speaking of things that are loved, we need to talk about the Devastator, baby. Devastator in the house, revealed on the same video. 10 cost space unit. It's a 10 drop. We're out here. The Devastator is a unique unit. It is a villainy command Imperial vehicle capital ship. For those 10 precious resources, you are getting a 10/10 Sentinel with Overwhelm, and when played, you may deal damage to a unit equal to the number of resources you control. It is a legendary. It is devastating. It is the Devastator. I am going to be devastated if I don't pull any of these, because this is awesome. and I immediately started building decks to ramp up to the Devastator. This is crazy. I know you're going to disagree, but I don't care. It's awesome.
Why would I disagree? This card is amazing.
I mean, you're all about economy. You're all about, paying. You got Boba Fett on the brain. You're like, oh, well, I can reset my resources and do all. I'd say this. Like, a Boba Fett deck is very clearly probably not playing Devastator unless it's a really spicy, kind of cool, whatever build that you can, Galactic Ambition or whatever. But I don't know, man. You get a lot for those 10 resources. You get a lot.
Yeah, you do. And I mean, the only question is just going to be like, by the time you get to 10, is it going to matter? And I think the answer to that question, it probably is, if you're getting to 10, then yeah, because if you're getting to 10, what the heck is going on in the game? Like, this is absolutely one of those game-changing cards. It would be like a very cinematic type of moment to drop this on the table, and all of a sudden the entire trajectory of the game, the battle shifts. So no, I think that this card is incredible, and I think that, in a situation where we get that far along, and if there's any aspect in which this can be cheated out earlier, it's going to be command anyway. So here you are. Like, this is a very, very powerful, and rightfully so for its price point, a card and effects that are coming in. I just think even at 10, it's just massively good.
So I think I tried to do the math, and I'm really bad at math, but I think the perfect scenario lets you get this out round 5. Okay. Because if you play a Super Laser Technician round 2 with your 3 resources, then you trigger that round 3 and then play another Super Laser Technician. Then round 4 you can trigger that and play 2 resupplies, and then you're at 10 at round 5. I think that's how it works. Because normally at round 5 you would be at 6 resources. So the 2 Super Laser Techs and the 2 resupplies would get you to 10 by the time you reset at round 5. So now it's a little dicey because you're depending on what you played round 1, you're dealing a maximum of 4 damage to your opponent's units or base with the 2 Super Laser Techs. And then that's also dependent on, your leader and when your leader deploys and all that. So is that enough to sort of survive a largely unchecked opponent 4 rounds into the game at that point? Maybe not, but you'll get to do 10 damage when this is dropped. So it's only to 1 unit, but hey, it's still pretty cool.
Yeah, that one plate effect is going to be overkill almost every time. But, at least it can take out the most impactful thing on the board. And then after that, you've also got a 10 health soak in space, and you've got a lot of firepower coming in once it actually gets to attack. So, no, I mean, it's a huge card, and I'm not going to be mad about pulling this guy at any point in any format. I'm good to go. This might actually be even better in limited because, with inefficiencies that come, outside of constructed, you may actually get to 10 more often than normal. So why not?
That's a third of your deck in limited. So we'll see. But yeah, you definitely want to drop this just for the fun of it. And then, I almost think you want to ramp naturally or natively to 10, because then at 9 you can drop Relentless and protect the Devastator from things like Vanquish or Waylay with the Relentless's ability. So maybe there's an argument to be made there to just double up on Star Destroyers in orbit and just, go to town, man. That's certainly something
people are going to be trying to do that.
Oh, hey, man.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
Star Destroyers are the best. But anyway, we'll move on. Really awesome card. Really excited to see it in the game. Really excited to have a 10 drop. That's pretty dope. This next one was just recently shown by the Spice Squadron. This is a cool one, Lothal Insurgent. It's a 2-cost ground unit in Cunning and Heroism. It is a 3/2 Rebel, just a Rebel. And when played, if you played another card this phase, each opponent draws a card, then discards a random card from their hand. Now, that's a crazy ability because you could hit. I mean, they don't get to choose what card they discard. I mean, that anything could be discarded, which is nuts. Now, the draw helps it be a little bit more of a mystery in case they only have one card in their hand. Obviously, if they have 0, this is just a straight discard off the top of the deck. But this is really cool for 2. I mean, you're getting a 3/2, you're getting a Rebel, so Leia's gonna love it. And you're getting a little bit of chaos being thrown into the mix of your opponent potentially discarding that one card that they've been holding on to. This seems like it's going to be some fun.
Yeah, I think so. And if you really didn't want to deal with all that, you could sequence it to where you just play it first, and then you don't have to worry about the ability. Depending on whether or not you want your opponent drawing cards. But I think even so, the chance at sniping something impactful out of your opponent's hand is always welcome in my book, Kevin.
Yeah.
So not unhappy to see this card as an option for Cunny.
We'll just watch. Corwin's going to be a mill player when Star Wars Unlimited comes out. Oh gosh.
Nope, no way.
Nobody's going to watch our gameplay videos because all you're going to be doing is milling me, and that's going to be so boring.
Not a chance. Not a chance.
Lothal Insurgent seems cool. Exciting to see, what shenanigans that ability can create and what sort of havoc we might see out of it. These next 2 cards were given to us by Scrawl on YouTube. The first one being the Mining Guild TIE Fighter. As you saw with the Lothal Insurgent just now, these next couple cards are going to be dealing with draw. So we'll start again with the Mining Guild TIE Fighter. It's a 1-cost Cunning Space Unit. For that one, you're getting a 1/2 Fringe Vehicle Fighter. And on attack, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card. This is a phenomenal card for limited format, first and foremost. How do you think it feels in constructed?
Weaker.
Mm-hmm.
But it's cheap. So I like that. And I think to have, some kind of a draw engine online is somewhat appealing. I mean, he's, this is a squishy unit for sure, but I think it'll potentially be a distraction for your opponent if they don't just want you to draw a bunch of cards. That being said, you still have to pay for it.
Yep.
And I think the 2-for-1 is a little bit worse than another card we're going to see shortly. But I think it's nice that it exists. I just don't know that it's going to be. In fact, I know it's not going to be a staple of any kind.
You do love your 1-cost cards, though.
I do.
Do you play?
I do.
Do you play this without the ability? Like if you just want 1-cost cards in your deck, do you play a 1/2 for 1?
I don't think so.
No.
It just I don't see this being. I mean, no. I don't know that I see this being a great option compared to some of the other 1-cost stuff out there.
You'd rather have a TIE Fighter at 2/1 than a Mining.
I love the TIE Fighter. Yes,
yep.
I do.
That makes sense.
Yeah, way better than this.
Well, let's look at a draw card that might be slightly better. This one is Mission Briefing, as we just mentioned. Choose a player. They draw 2 cards. 3-cost event in aggression only. We were told that aggression wants to do cards in the aggression stream. This fits that bill. 3 for 2. Where do we land?
Yeah, much better.
Much better.
Much better. Yeah, 3 for 2, much better than 2 for 1, in my opinion. So I think this is a good card to keep cycling through, and we'll see what kind of shenanigans aggression can pull off with its card draw mechanics that we haven't really seen as explicitly with the other aspects yet. But it feels like if you're trying to draw, this is the card to help. Just feels really good for 3.
I will be forthright in the sense that I was expecting this next card to be next on the slideshow, which is why I said it would be a much better card, because I wanted to pair the 2 cards that we saw from Scrawl together. So we're going to skip over mission briefing for now, and we're going to talk about Search Your Feelings, because I think mission briefing is going to be a little bit more mission critical, see what I did there, to our overall discussion about drawing cards. And I'll explain why in a minute. But first, we're going to hit Search Your Feelings. It's a 4-cost event in Vigilance and Villainy. You get to search your deck for a card and draw it, then shuffle your deck. This is a rare. I think there's a reason it's a rare. You can find anything. The question I have is, where do you land on 4 being the cost when we just saw 3 for 2 draw? This is 4 for 1, but you get to pick anything you want. How does how do you strike that balance in your mind?
I think it makes sense. You definitely should pay a premium for being able to handpick the cards that you're drawing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that if this was 4 for 2, it would be busted. So I feel like it's good at 1 and a very fair price, I think, for pulling any card you want when this is played. And and at 4, I mean, that's early enough in the game to where you can get to something very impactful, relatively soon. So I think this can be, quite strong for those who want to tutor.
I have 2 follow-ups. You said 4 for 2 would be busted, and I agree with you, especially if you're able to pick whatever you want. Do you think the other direction, do you think 3 for this card would also be busted?
Not in the same way as 4 for 2, but I do think that it would be up there in terms of power level of a 3-cost card. It would be one of the best 3-cost cards in the game at that point.
I think round 2 is a little too early for a card like this, which is why I think they made it 4.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you're playing this on round 3 and using all your resources to do it, you are sacrificing a bit of tempo that your opponent has likely built up already. Whereas that tempo and that engine is not necessarily going in round 2. So I think it makes more sense at 4 for that reason. I also think that, because you're searching for literally anything you want, that needs to come with a price tag, a premium price tag, like you mentioned. But also, does this feel better late game than it does on that round 3? Like, do you build a deck around using this to set up, and finding that exact combo piece you need, or is this a lifesaver late game when you need Vader's lightsaber, or you need a Sentinel, or you need an open fire, or you need an overwhelming barrage? Where do you see the power level of Search Your Feelings when it comes to time in the game?
I think that question will better be answered once we have the full card pool.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think right now, the mind immediately goes to, okay, you're playing this at 4. What's your best 5-cost option you can pull and take advantage of this right away? Mm-hmm. And there just aren't a lot right now. We haven't seen a lot of villainy 5-cost, except for overwhelming barrage, which we've all talked about and all think is good. So I think the jury's out on that still for me. But I do think that the ability to do this and do it impactfully at different phases of the game, regardless of what the rest of this set looks like, adds to the power level and strength of this card. And I think that is part of the answer to the question, is that I don't think it matters. I think it's really good regardless of timing.
Fair enough. Bit of a cop-out, but I'll give it to you. So I want to go back to mission briefing because I want to examine the value of drawing cards here, because I think there's been a lot of discussion in Discords and on podcasts and on Twitter and just overall within the community about how meaningful card draw is in Star Wars Unlimited. Because Star Wars Unlimited is unique because you're drawing 2 cards every round. But are you really? And I think that's sort of where I want to hit your feelings on the matter, because I definitely have my opinions. And, you know, I know that draw is usually really good in card games. You know, if you're drawing and or scrying in Magic, generally you're doing something right. You've got a huge deck to work through. Same with Pokemon. I mean, almost the entire power level of Pokemon in the short time that I played it was cards that allowed you to search your deck for stuff. Search your deck for these energies. Search your deck for an evolution Pokemon. Search your deck for a Pokemon V. You know, this, that, and the other thing. Just the ability to immediately just go and get what you need out of your deck and then shuffle your deck. Now, they've talked about Star Wars Unlimited sort of being a game where they don't want you to shuffle your deck a ton, don't want you to be taking all of that time to be playing this game, which is why Search Your Feelings, I believe, is the first card we've seen that requires you to shuffle your deck, which is interesting. But let's start with the concept of draw as a whole, right? When you think of draw in this game, how much value are you putting on it right now as a strategy to put within your deck with the cards that we've seen at this point?
I think to the extent that I can get it in there, I want it.
Okay.
Because I think that anytime you have expanded options beyond what your opponent may have, I think that's an advantage that's worth pursuing. The draw mechanic in Unlimited is interesting because while you do draw 2 cards during upkeep, you're then deciding to resource one of those cards. And so in a lot of cases, it can feel like you're really only drawing 1. And so because of that, I think my lean, at least initially, is that card draw holds its strength in this game as it does in other games. I think that the ability to expand those options and give yourself more flexibility, not just in terms of what you could potentially play, but also in terms of what you could potentially resource, is a really powerful effect. So, as I said, to the extent that I can build draw into my deck, I probably will. And the options will seemingly be more limited outside of aggression, but even so, I think any card that has a draw mechanic to it is going to get an extra boost, because I think it definitely is quite a powerful effect in this game. At least that's my initial lean.
I think I agree with half of what you're saying, right? I think that my sort of sticking point on this is it's not really 2 cards that you're drawing every round because of the resource mechanic. So let's investigate that for a second, right? So by the start of round 6, if you are resourcing every round, you'll have got, and not drawing at all, right? Let's just say there's no card draw in your deck. You will have gotten through 18 cards in your deck out of 50. That's not half. That's decently far off from half. Of those 18 cards that you will have seen from your deck, 7 of them you will have resourced. Because again, we're stipulating that you have resourced every round. So that means of the 50 cards that you have seen, you're only playing with 11. I don't know if, like, again, we had the deck structure is such that it's going to reward you for, you know, having a lot of 3-ofs in your deck. So you're probably going to see, you know, a decent spread in those 18/11 cards that you're seeing without any card draw. But, you know, mixing in card draw is going to let you get through your deck a little quicker, yes, but also, you know, if you only draw 1 Veers in those first 18 cards, there's a world in which you're going to want a second one, because that's going to be a priority target for your opponent, and it might get evaporated pretty quickly. Same with Dodonna, same with Obi-Wan Kenobi, same with really any Sentinel if you're trying to protect your base, you know, cell block guard, what have you. You know, if you need to get more Spectres for Hera, which we just talked about, card draw is a way to do it. So yes, you're drawing 2, yes, you're making the choice of what to resource and having that decision point where it's like the lesser of two evils of what card to put down. I understand all that. But at the end of the day, you're still only seeing 18 cards and playing with 11. So I do think card draw is going to have value. Now, you said work it in however you can. The part I disagree with there, as we take a look at some of these events that allow you to draw cards. In a 50 card deck like we have, I worry about the relative strength of events that let you draw, unless they do something else, right? Because events are a little bit more finicky to me, in the sense that they're not really helping your win condition. They're helping you not lose if they do certain things, but in Star Wars Unlimited, it feels like units are king. So I wonder if there's a distinction and there's a priority for building in card draw when card draw is attached to units more than it's attached to events. Where do you land on that?
Yeah, that was going to be the follow-up point as you were framing your question, because with we I don't know how many episodes ago it was now where we had that conversation about Callus and whether we thought his he was worth the 5, and I think as more thoughts have begun to formulate for me anyway in terms of draw, I think my perception of Callus has only increased, because of the fact that he has that built-in effect, which, based on sequencing, you can pretty reliably trigger. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think it's strong there. Putting in cards like Mission Briefing just for the pure fact of drawing, I think is going to feel less good. Although I still like Mission Briefing being able to draw too. Mm-hmm. It's basically like an extra round of draw. So I do like that, but I think, yeah, the units and other sort of cards that are doing additional things while also giving you maybe a replacement card or something are going to be the ones to target, and less so the dedicated just drawing card kind of events.
Let me ask you this, because they're right next to each other on the photo that we have up for those who are watching, and if you're listening, I try not to leave you out here. But Mission Briefing costs 3, gets you 2 cards. I Am Your Father costs 3 and gets you 3 cards or 7 damage. Now, I remember when this card came out, it was not looked at as a meme card, but it definitely had sort of that air to it, as to like, well, I mean, your opponent's never going to let you do 7, right? So if you are assuming as a player that 9.5 times out of 10, you're getting 3 cards for 3 with I Am Your Father, doesn't that make it better than Mission Briefing?
I think so. I also think that if I'm playing against it, I'm having second thoughts about just letting my unit die, because yeah, I mean, 3 cards is huge. That's so much value for your opponent. So this is a card that, again, and I'm glad you brought it up. It's another example for me of a card that has only gained traction in my mind as we've looked more at the card pool, because I think it's a very difficult choice for the person sitting across the table, and that's exactly where I want to put them. So with a card like this is, make them uncomfortable and, present 2 very, very strong options for me as the one playing it. So I think, yeah, the added sort of stress and decision point with I Am Your Father does make it better than Mission Briefing. And for that reason, I think if I'm playing Villainy, I'm taking a very close look at this card as a good way to alternatively build in draw if I'm not, again, dedicating resources to it with, being an aggression or otherwise.
Let's stick with the villainy cards for a second because I do want to touch on Force Choke.
Mm-hmm.
Force Choke for 2 deals 5 damage, or 1 if you have a Force unit, as we know. But it does give your opponent the card draw. Where do you land on spending 2 for Force Choke? Because I think it's pretty obvious that spending 1 for that card, you can live with the card draw because you're getting 5 for 1. Spending 2 for it, again, 2 for 5 is better than like an open fire curve, but it does show the value of drawing a card, considering that you're giving that extra resource you're saving, but you're giving that up as a result that your opponent gets a card. So where do you land on spending 2 for Force Choke? I still think it's worth it, but there is a strength to your opponent having one other thing to bolster their hand with.
So personally, I have never liked Force Choke as a card.
Wow.
And so I think if the question is, how do you feel about paying 2 for it? My answer is always going to be terrible. I don't even feel that great about paying 1 for it. So you're asking someone who's pretty biased, I think. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the card. So I don't like the trade-off enough to include this in one of my villainy decks. I just don't think it's cheap. It's cheap, heavy damage, which is nice, but I would only want to see it like super late.
So
because I'm not doing this early.
Even if you have a deck that has a bunch of Force units in it, where you can constantly trigger Force Choke for 1, you value the not delivering your opponent a card that much that you wouldn't pay 1 for 5?
It's going to feel better at 1 for 5, but I think my point is that I'm not going out of my way to add more value to a card that I already think is subpar.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. I think at the end of the day, right, there's still 100+ cards left to be revealed. You know, we're gonna figure out, you know, where draw lands as we get closer, especially like top of your deck draw, right? Because I think we're gonna get a little bit more of that. It may be conditional, it may be situational. We're seeing a lot of that with some of the units that draw cards, right? You know, when things are defeated, you're drawing cards. You know, see Obi-Wan, see Yoda, see Callus. You know, there's a lot of that in there. See Starwing Scout, right? Mm-hmm. So, but again, very conditional. So I think that's always going to be baked in. It's like the trade-off is, yes, you lost a unit, but you're getting cards as a result, which again, I think makes unit draw a little bit stronger in my opinion than event draw. But again, you know, I'm personally giving a much harder look to I Am Your Father than I ever did previously. And I think that that's really cool that, again, we're talking about starter level cards here. This is a full play set in your 2-player starter. I Am Your Father. So
yeah, and I believe if you're on the hero side, you get full play sets of R2 and 3PO as well, correct?
I believe that is correct.
So there's another example. I mean, those guys aren't going to do a lot of damage for you, but are they worth including just for the fact that if you can get them both down and reliably trigger a draw as long as they're on the board, use them as a decoy for some other units? I don't know. I mean, maybe some added value there.
I don't know what you're decoying. I mean, you put an entrenched on one of those bad boys, you're going to town. All of a sudden, you've got a 4/7 that you paid 1 for. That feels pretty good.
Yeah, the visual of C-3PO entrenched is that's I'm chuckling at that one.
Well, you know, you put him in the Geonosian arena, he can do some work. I'm interested to see how much draw is included when, you know, the early metagame starts to develop. I'm very interested to see like which of these event cards end up making it into decks? Like, how much search your feelings are you going to see? How much prepare for takeoff are you going to see? Now that's one we didn't talk about, but you don't get to go dig for whatever you want, but you're drawing 8 cards off your deck, and you can pick up to 2 cards out of that. Now they have to be vehicles, but seeing 8 extra cards. I mean, we were just talking about only working with 11 in 6 rounds, and now you're getting to see 8. That's crazy. How viable vehicles are remains very highly to be seen, but that flexibility is at least interesting, and a lot more interesting than I think we might have thought when the game first started to reveal cards, and we were wondering what the overall resource value of a card was. I think we're starting to get a clearer picture on that, and now that we've seen more of what a draw card is worth in resources, you still think it's fair, true or false?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Going back to this idea of 11 cards, I mean, the thing that including card draw does for you is it opens up deck building, because it allows you to have options in there that you may not otherwise, understanding that, you're going to see a limited number of cards per game. With with a deck that's not really drawing, you're probably running mostly 3-ofs, like you said before. And I think that's just in an effort to make sure you get to give yourself the best chance to get to the cards you want. Card draw, you can get a little bit more creative if you're cycling through more cards every game. So we can't lose sight of that. But at the same time, if you're drawing cards, that means you're not dealing damage. That means you're not reinforcing your battlefield. There's always a trade-off. So I'm with you in terms of the curiosity as to where this mechanic will land, but I'm inclined to think it's going to be a pretty strong one, as it typically is in card games.
And if you include 3 prepare for takeoffs in your deck, then that's 3 potential seasoned Shoretroopers that you have to leave out. So,
back to that seasoned Shoretrooper.
So I don't know how worth it that is, but time will tell. We are out of time, so I want to make sure we wrap this up before we hit the hour. But a discussion that I'm sure we'll revisit another time. Again, I think draw in this game is super interesting, and one that we will have our eyes on. As Palpatine would say, I'm sure we're going to watch your career with great interest as we're talking to the draw mechanic. But I think that's about as far as we can go today. So thanks everybody for making it this far. For those of you who did, thank you for listening. Again, we really appreciate all the interactions that we've seen. If you have continued to watch at this point, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. And comment down below what you think about card draw. Is it too strong in Star Wars Unlimited? Is it still not up to the level that you'd expect it to be? Does it remain to be seen? How do you feel about resource costs of drawing cards? Anything and everything you want to discuss, please feel free to drop that in the comments, and we'll try to respond to as many of those as we can. But for now, that's going to do it for this episode of Roll On Gaming. Corwin, thanks as always for the chat. It was fun. We'll hopefully do it again in a couple weeks. I will be traveling next week, so the likelihood that we'll do an episode is very very low. But of course, because I'm traveling, that means the likelihood that they drop the Thrawn leader on us while I'm unable to react to it is very high. So if they do indeed drop Thrawn while I'm gone, Star Wars Unlimited community, you're welcome. So that's all I have to say about that. Corwin, thanks again for your time. As always, it was fun, man. I'm still very very excited for this game to come out.
Yeah, how can you not be? There's just so many new and exciting things coming. It seems like every week, and we're just getting closer and closer to launch. So, for me, it's just getting the cards in my hands. That's going to be the thing that's keeping me up at night. But no, it's always good to talk through things with you, and I think as we see more of the card pool, the discussions will evolve. And we'll start to be able to really have a better sense of how everything is coming together and speak to it more profoundly. So I'm looking forward to that too.
More profoundly in the sense that we just went over our hour because Corwin couldn't stop talking. So for those of you who stayed the extra few seconds, I apologize. We will give you back the rest of your day. But in the meantime, thanks again for listening. Thanks again for subscribing, and we will see you all next time. Appreciate it, everybody. Have a great day.